Some jobs become completely irrelevant, others become accelerated. Inequality gets accelerated, and nobody knows where the world is going, and we're stuck in this liminal space, quite fearful and concerned for ourselves. Is that what we're talking about? Is that where we're heading into? Or perhaps we've already been there. So with Andy and Kim, Andy Hilger, Kim Sneeder, Andy, up until very recently, ran one of the largest staffing organizations in the world. And there was this event that happened recently. You may have heard of it if you're using GPT well. It's called COVID. And when COVID happened, some jobs stopped overnight. Some jobs became essential jobs. And the whole landscape of work shifted literally overnight. But your job, both of you, was to keep on keeping on. Could you just, we've had a lot of conversation about AI this morning. I want to know, as a carbon-based life form, what did that feel like, Andy? The day that you realized the world stopped spinning and that you kind of had this responsibility, and at that point in time, we're putting 10,000 people to work every week. Like, can you give us a little insight? Because we might all be feeling this within our corporation sometime soon, and what to do about that?
Yeah, it was terrifying. I can remember the week of March 9th to the 13th, every day trying to figure out, do we send everyone home? Don't we? San Francisco and Seattle had already largely done that. Other cities were following suit. Some states weren't. There was pressure coming from every side, and nobody really knew what was going on. I think similar to where Tony started, we had these fears of what's going to happen to. We had 10,000 people that would start a job every Monday. We had about 200,000 people out on client sites. So I was really fearful about what's going to happen to them. Are they safe? Are we being good citizens? All these thoughts are running through my mind. And we make the decision, as pretty much concurrent with the rest of the world, on March 13th, that, hey, come Monday, nobody's showing up at the office. And I didn't sleep at all that weekend thinking, all right, are our systems going to be able to support what happens? Are our people going to be able to actually focus and take care of our contractors and consultants who are out there? So Monday, I woke up and watched the data showing that, yeah, our network's holding up. And that was sort of job one. But we were also then dealing with massive furloughs and layoffs. So it's typical that if we start 10,000 people in a week, we may have 8,000 or 9,000 finish, and we've got to figure it out. Suddenly we were having 50,000 and 60,000 people who were being told, hey, you're not going to get a paycheck for the next couple of weeks, and it may go on a lot longer than that. And then we had another 50,000 who were going to go work from home and needed to get a laptop. And then we had others who were being declared essential and had their own safety concerns. So it was terrifying. And so that first day was all about just, are we able to kind of keep the lights on? By the second and third day, I started to see we had more contacts with people than we had had in our history. So started to think about that and said, all right, our people aren't distracted. They're actually tremendously empathetic. And to build on what Charlene had said, our values are really about relationships. Our purpose is about creating opportunity. And that was shining through in how people reacted. And then I think the lessons for the future with AI started to show up then with, as people were being furloughed and laid off, we were getting calls from other people saying, hey, we need 5,000 warehouse workers, or we need contact tracers. And so we then started to figure out, well, how can we actually efficiently move people around, and who has those skills? And I left incredibly inspired by the very human nature, the empathy that our team demonstrated. And I think there's a lot of lessons there. And while I've sort of been on the peril and promise roller coaster here, I think if we look at this as an opportunity, there is tremendous promise for the future of work, but we have to look at it as an opportunity. We have to move away from some of that fear. I think Kim can give you a lot more on-the-ground views into that.
So Kim, how was that for you? So that we're hearing from Andy, but from your perspective.
Yeah, so Career Circle lives within the larger Allegis family, and we had launched the platform maybe a year before, I think, Andy. So I remember Andy calling me and we were thinking through it, and I said, well, we're going to put it to test immediately because the platform was built to upskill candidates, look at transferable skills, and fill in-demand roles. And so we started to look at, take the contact tracer as an example. It was a brand new role, and states were calling us needing 2,000, 3,000 contact tracers per state. And so we looked within the ecosystem because 153 nonprofits were feeding into that ecosystem, supporting veterans, underrepresented communities, and women reentering the workforce. You had organizations like Google and Salesforce and IBM helping upskill, and then we needed to look at the transferable skills and help them find roles. So an interesting example was we had individuals that wanted to get into IT, maybe they had been in manufacturing, but they didn't have any corporate experience. But they were in process of the Google IT professional certificate, which helps with help desk. Well, it was so interesting to watch these individuals go into that contact tracer role, get the corporate experience, leverage their certificate, and fast forward years later, then they moved into an IT support role and then a systems administrator role. And I laugh as we are in the platform, you're watching and you're growing with these individuals. So you really did, in a time of fear and wondering what was going to happen, you started to also see this really cool element of solving a business problem and changing a life. And I thought, okay, if you take this model, you can do some really powerful things in the world.
Yeah, I've had the great benefit of working with Allegis for many years, and you know, it started out with the purpose, back to what Charlene said, about opportunity. And as an academic, you know, one of the things that I really like to study is something called discretionary effort. What you do because you want to, not because you're told to. And for me, I almost felt like the organization lit up when this happened, because it's like, we've been here our whole lives to do this. Now, not that you wanted the COVID to come, I'm pretty sure that wasn't the reason, but it just felt to me, it's like ever since the firm was started, it was about creating opportunity for people. Now, if Charlene's right, we can create an AI bot to go along with each of these people as they move forward, right? And think about that. That's kind of limitless. It's like that movie, you know, you take the pill, it's limitless. You have this capability that gets built. But one of the things that I found that was really inspiring about this is you all did this. The question I asked was, okay, so all of a sudden Delta doesn't need people to work anymore, but Amazon does. And there was this kind of matching mechanism of, we have to keep the lights on, we have to do contact tracing. We don't want people to go back to where they came from, or maybe there is no going back. So you're not on a treadmill, Andy, you're on the way you talked about it was you're on an elevator. You're not only going to helping the community right now with the contact tracing work, but you're getting trained by Google or Salesforce or at the same time. And then when it subsides, you have an opportunity to again perhaps get on an elevator to move yourself forward. And I think that brings it back to when we were talking with X earlier on today about the opportunity for underrepresented people, you know, breaking into the technology world so that we don't have some of this bias and so on and so forth. Could you tell us a little bit more about the statistics from Career Circle, IT underrepresentation, and how perhaps what your ecosystem that you put together is there to address that?
Sure, and I'll try to stay seated, but I get really passionate about this, and that's probably not a strong enough word. Literally, in so many parts of my house, there is a funnel, and it shows the percentage of underrepresented talent in technology. And let's use an example. Black women make up 3% of technology, which is just wild. Yet, if you think about the products that we're making or the services we provide, look at your consumer base that you're supporting. And there's such a variance there. And so when I think about what you're going to do to change that and how you get really intentional, number one, it can't just be a marketing campaign. That was one thing I told Andy from the beginning. I said, we're going to build something. We're going to change the world in the process, and I'm going to measure every step of it, because I will not be an organization that makes a proclamation and doesn't hold ourselves accountable. And I think that's really important. And so then you have to say, okay, well, how are we going to do that? So I know, as an example, using women in technology and specifically women of color, we partner with organizations like the Mom Project and Rise, where you had these really strong communities of individuals, but maybe they needed access to the curriculum. And the world was saying, you're more than a resume, but what was talent acquisition looking at? resume. Or you would hear, we can change your life for $5,000 or $10,000. And maybe it was a prohibitive way for them to gain access to the skills. So what we did was we partnered with the communities, and then we partnered with the organizations and tech companies, which were amazing, to get the scholarships. So we're really focusing on equality. And then you've got to take these women or these individuals to market in a powerful way. And you've got to show those multiple dimensions of who they are. And you've got to look at skills-based hiring. I think it was interesting, too, a lot of these women, they might have had 7, 8, 9 years experience and perhaps been out of the workforce for 4 years. And then what happens in our antiquated system? A recruiter says, let me talk to your references from the last 2 years. Well, unless I'm going to put a headset on my 4-year-old, I can't accommodate that, right? So let's look at things differently. But when you put these actions in motion, I know we built our team from these different populations. 38% of our team came from individuals that were upskilled. And guess what? They're in the top 10% of our performers. So it's not just social responsibility or doing the right thing. It's a business imperative. And I think the combination of the two is what's so powerful.
And so, Andy, well, she's off doing that. I love how you said, so I told Andy I'm not gonna, so that's Kim for you, and that's the relationship they have.
I listen to Kim.
Right. and also, I believe selecting Kim was absolutely part of, you knew that this couldn't happen. Did you look at her resume?
I don't know. Kim probably hadn't updated her resume since I met her in 1998. I think I looked at somebody who I knew would find a way to get this done. I think, what was the earlier? Somebody is unstoppable, unstoppable. And I think there have been so many great examples. We had X earlier. I don't know if X is still in the room, but talk about unstoppable, but how many X's are we missing? How many people are not getting surfaced through the current, and this is the peril side of AI and matching, the current system that says, I'm going to take a job description that was written in 1984 and has been copied and pasted 11 times and updated with some relevant skills. And I'm going to use that to bang a bunch of resumes against. Guess what? You're not going to find X that way. You're probably not going to find anyone. You're going to have GPTs talking to GPTs, and that's where this whole system is fundamentally broken. And I think the system in how we find talent is broken, but it's also how do we create a workplace where people are exerting that discretionary effort and they're on fire to come to work and they feel that sense of mission and purpose. And I just keep coming back to we're at this really important inflection point. I think Ken said it at breakfast this morning. It's day one. If you read the old Amazon Bezos day one letter, day one is the chance where you're excited, you've got a pit in your stomach, but you can create the future. And I think we have a chance right now to recreate the way the workplace works. And I worry right now we're living in that March 13th sense of fear and on the peril side. We've got to figure out how to shift over to that what is the promise and how are we going to have agency and how we create that future.
Yeah, I think it's tough. And myself at Duke, well-known institution, hard to get in. I teach in 2 programs, in the MBA school and in the engineering school, Master of Engineering. Currently, Andy and I were just talking about this, is my students have, let's ask, on average, how many job applications have they put in this year? Each student?
30.
1,000. 1,000 applications. So they are using the technology, and they're trying to do everything, and their model is more equals output. And then when they hear that this other person did 800, then they're going to do 100 more. So they're not sleeping. They're GPTing their letters. They're tuning their resumes. And then they're sending it into the system. And I was talking to a student of mine, a TA of mine on Friday, and she was crying. And she had an opportunity with a company she really loved, and she got through the 4th interview. And then it's like, sorry, nothing for you. And she's just like, the system is so broken, professor. And she's like, and I have some friends on the inside of this company. And they told me that job that I was applying for wasn't on the internal, like it's broken. Like you have this GPT arms wars on, on the one side I'm using it to put the stuff in, and on the other side, it's kind of garbage in, garbage out, back to what we've talked about before. And so I'm like, this doesn't make sense anymore. do you see a future where, I mean, sometimes revolution requires that we kind of rethink everything. Do we have to rethink the job? Do we have to rethink qualified? Perhaps you could talk a little bit about, I think one of the most important things in Career Circle was this notion of rethinking qualified, and you don't have to jump through every hoop, and experience can really matter, and how do we measure that experience? Because you've seen in your results, if I'm not mistaken, Kim, that even this tough environment, folks coming out of your program are getting hired even when there's a lot of what we might call typically qualified people available for those IT jobs. Would you give us some insights on rethinking qualified?
Yeah, for sure. I think the concept of rethink qualified is both for the candidate and for the employer, because when you've been told you aren't qualified over and over, guess what happens? You start to believe it, right? And confidence is down. And then the employer, through years of having a certain job description, we create belief systems on what we need. I had the same thing. I've been with Allegis for 25 years, so I had to break paradigm shifts as I was hiring. So I think you start with that foundation of what do you really need, and then for the candidates, helping them understand what they're qualified for. A lot of these individuals, again, they may have had 10 or 12 years of experience, but they're career switchers. So we have a team that's working with them, and then we have resources on the platform that's helping them understand, here are the skills you can gain after we understand their goals, skills, and interests, and then here's sort of that career pathing that you can go down. And that's where the discretionary effort comes in. Because when you've been told your whole life you're not qualified and the conversation ends with no bridge, and then someone gives you a chance because they see the transferable skills, what do you think the impact is going to be when they come to work for you? When you create a generational change in their family, when their life has a different trajectory. And for me, AI is an interesting place because what we've heard so much today, that there's this potential skills gap. I spoke with 100 CTOs the other day, and they said on average they were waiting 9 months to fill a position. And then when they made the hire, they were still making concessions because there was a skills shortage. So how long are we going to wait before we take this proactive approach to say, I'm going to rethink what we need, what are the specific skills, what could be transferable, and could I get someone upskilled in those 9 months and tap into that discretionary effort versus waiting and still making concessions? It's a really interesting paradigm where I think we have to do it on both sides, and that's what we're hoping the tech does, because again, we have to break these paradigm shifts that we've created in our mind. I personally had to.
I think one of the big problems with tech in general is kind of, the routinization trap, automating the past, bad assumptions and all, and we typically, in the name of efficiency, want to take tech and throw it at these, oh great, we can rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic faster, but we're still going to hit the iceberg kind of problem. And I think we always tend to fall into this, at least that's what Peter Drucker suggests. Andy, because I see the clock's going down, I mean, do we need a full rethink and shift? I mean, does the whole market shift? In the old world with Allegis, I think it was, the employers need XYZ number of this kind of skill, and we are going to do the technology match and then provide the humans to the companies. Charlene was just talking, or Bill Gates, I think has said everybody's going to have a personal bot, right? If you think about what Microsoft's doing. So if I wake up 2,040 days from now, Ken's backstage there. If I wake up 2,040 days, that's a lot of day ones. But I can imagine a world where, at that point in time, every carbon-based life form that comes in on Earth gets $10,000 put into their account for whatever they want to do in terms of their own fulfillment. And then they have their AI bot that looks like the teddy bear at first, and then it moves through. And the bot's job is not about how do I, command your attention to control your consumption. It's about how do I understand what your aspiration is, and how do I show you the path to fulfillment to allow you to become your fullest and best self. I mean, to me, they're both algorithms. Which one would be better for us? Do you see a world, Andy, and I asked you this in my people analytics class a couple of years ago, I'm curious for the update, do you see a world where the actual kind of marketplace shifts like that? Is this technology capable of doing that, or am I just absolutely insane? Which is also, those are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I was going to say, could be an and, but, and I have no idea what I said 2 years ago. I think that's absolutely not just possible, it has to be a course we move towards. I think when we think about education, and I think Toby talked about some inequities in education and the ability to leverage AI and a bot and a personal assistant to close some of that gap. I don't think there's any difference in thinking about that through somebody's career and their work life. And why can't we optimize for fulfillment and potential? And in the end, as much as I think the conventional wisdom is work can be a soul-sucking place, it doesn't have to be. I think the real joy we all experience is the joy from going where we are to kind of realize our potential. And I think all this technology can supercharge that. Why shouldn't we have superhumans showing up? And why shouldn't we be guiding them with bots like that? And why shouldn't we be thinking very differently about how we access that talent and get them into the work world?
So, 5 years from now, we're looking forward to coming back to Techonomy, where generative AI is acting as a coach mentor that enables autonomy, mastery, and purpose for people. Generative AI is a designer of work that is meaningful, valuable, and fulfilling. And generative AI is an orchestrator of workplaces that are inclusive, safe, and developmental. If you can do that for us, I think it'll be better. And I can't think of a better community than Techonomy to do that. And let's start today. Thank you all very much.